They called her forgettable, the woman, no one invited, the healer, no one stayed to thank. So when a winter storm swallowed the forest and she vanished into the snow, nobody came looking. But deep in those frozen woods, she found something even more abandoned than herself, a giant white wolf that had suffered in silence for 3 long years. Everyone feared the beast. Everyone avoided it. Yet this forgotten woman did the impossible. She reached into the jaws of the most powerful wolf in the kingdom and removed the pain no one else could. What she did not know was that the wolf belonged to the Alpha King, and by saving the creature everyone feared, she was about to change her own destiny forever. Now listen to the incredible story of how one act of kindness transformed a lonely healer into the heart of an Alpha King's family. There are wounds that bleed and there are wounds that remain invisible. The invisible ones are often the hardest to carry. Lena knew that truth better than anyone. Every morning she woke before the sun touched the mountains, before smoke rose from village chimneys. Before laughter filled the streets, she woke when the world was still quiet enough to hear her own loneliness. The small cottage where she lived stood near the edge of the village where the roads became narrow and the houses became scarce. Most people passed by without noticing it. Sometimes days went by without a single visitor. Not that visitors came because they missed her. People only came when they needed something. Medicine for a sick child, herbs for a fever, bandages for an injury advice, for an animal that refused to eat. When their problems disappeared, they left. And so did their attention. Lena had learned not to expect anything more. The cold air slipped through the cracks in her wooden walls as she pulled a worn cloak around her shoulders and stepped outside. Winter had settled heavily over the land. Snow-covered rooftops, frost-decorated tree branches. The entire village looked as if it had been painted in silver and white. Beautiful, silent, distant Lena carried an empty basket toward the forest path. The basket would not remain empty for long. Many families depended on the herbs she gathered. Many lives became easier because of her work, yet very few people remembered her name once the work was done. A small smile touched her lips. Because she was happy, because she had learned how to survive disappointment, the smile had become armor. A gentle armor, one that protected her heart without turning it cold. As she walked through the village square, she noticed people preparing for the evening gathering. Tables were being arranged. Lanterns hung from wooden poles. Children chased each other through the snow while parents laughed nearby. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. Everyone seemed connected to someone. Everyone except her. A young woman spotted Lena and immediately hurried toward her. Relief filled her face. Lena recognized that expression. People often looked relieved when they saw her. Not because they enjoyed her company, because she solved problems. "Lena, my daughter has been coughing all night. Could you please come look at her?" Of course, the answer came naturally. It always did. The woman thanked her and quickly led her away. Inside the warm house, Lena examined the little girl and prepared a simple herbal remedy. The child smiled sleepily. As she drank it, her mother sighed with gratitude. For a brief moment, Lena thought the woman might ask her to stay for supper. Maybe share a conversation, maybe sit near the fire. Instead, the woman turned toward her daughter. All attention immediately shifting. Away, Lena quietly gathered her things and left. The door closed behind her. No invitation, no goodbye, only silence. The village streets felt colder than before. Yet she continued walking. An elderly man needed help repairing a broken gate. A widow needed firewood. Carried inside, a hunting dog had injured its paw and required treatment. The hours passed, one after another. Everywhere she went, people welcomed her assistance. Everywhere she went, she remained unseen. If loneliness had a shape, it would have followed her through those streets like a shadow. Always present, always waiting. But Lena refused to allow loneliness to poison her kindness. That was her quiet victory. The world had taken many things from her. It would not take that. As evening approached the village, Square became crowded. Music drifted through the air. Families gathered around fires, friends exchanged stories and laughter. The warm glow of lanterns painted golden circles across the snow. Lena stood at the edge of it all, watching, listening, existing a few. People nodded politely when they noticed her. Then their attention moved elsewhere. She remained where she was for several moments, not because she expected anyone to approach, because a small part of her still hoped. Hope was stubborn that way, even after disappointment, even after years of being forgotten. Hope continued searching for reasons to stay alive. Eventually, she turned away. The forest offered more comfort than crowded gatherings ever had. Trees never ignored her. The wind never pretended she was invisible. Nature accepted her exactly as she was. The sun had almost disappeared when she followed the familiar trail beyond the village boundary. Snow crunched beneath her boots, tall pine trees stretched endlessly toward the darkening sky. The forest seemed peaceful, yet tonight, something felt different. A strange tension lingered in the air. Like the woods were waiting for something, as she gathered herbs beneath a cluster of frost-covered branches. She remembered the stories villagers often told tranchis. About a giant wolf hunter spoke about massive footprints discovered deep within the forest. Travelers claimed glowing eyes, watched them from distant hills. Children whispered tales about a beast larger than any ordinary wolf. Some believed it was a monster, others believed it was a guardian. Nobody knew the truth. Lena had never paid much attention. Stories tended to grow larger each time they were told. Still, she could not deny that the rumors had survived for years. That alone made them interesting. Forest gradually darkened around her. Moonlight filtered through the trees. Silver light spilled across the snow, creating a dreamlike landscape. Everything appeared calm. Then she heard it. Lena froze instantly. The sound echoed faintly through the forest. Low, rough. Unusual at first she thought it was a growl. But something about it felt wrong. A growl carried warning, anger, threat. This sound carried frustration, weariness, pain. The noise came again. Longer this time. Deeper. The hairs on the back of her neck rose, every instinct told her to leave. Most people would have turned around immediately. Most people would have run. Yet Lena remained still, listening. Because beneath the fear she heard something familiar. Suffering. And suffering had always been impossible for her to ignore. Slowly, she moved toward the sound, one careful step after another. The trees became thicker, the shadows deeper. Snow drifted softly through the air. The strange sound echoed again, closer now, very close. Her heartbeat quickened. The basket in her hands suddenly felt heavier. The cold air seemed sharper. Then she reached a clearing, and everything stopped. The enormous wolf stood beneath the moonlight. For a moment, Lena forgot how to breathe. The creature looked ancient, powerful, magnificent. White fur covered its massive body like fresh snow. Golden eyes reflected the night sky. Its shoulders stood higher than any wolf she had ever imagined. Strength radiated from every movement. Yet something else existed beneath that strength: exhaustion. The wolf lowered its head and released the strange sound again, a sound that immediately tugged at her heart. The animal looked irritated, uncomfortable, tired, as though it had been fighting the same battle for far too long. Then it opened its mouth, only for a second. But a second was enough. Lena saw it, a thin piece of wood buried deep inside its tongue, a splinter. Her eyes widened. The wolf snapped its jaws shut again and shook its head in frustration. The realization settled slowly over her that Splinter had not arrived recently. Wound looked old, very old, weeks, months, perhaps years. The thought hurt more than it should have, because suddenly the giant wolf no longer appeared frightening. It appeared lonely, a creature carrying pain. Nobody had been able to remove, a creature suffering. In silence, while the world told stories about how dangerous it was, the wolf lifted its head, golden eyes locking onto hers. The distance between them felt impossibly small. Fear rushed through her body. One movement, one leap, one decision from the wolf could end everything, yet neither of them moved. The forest fell silent around them. No wind, no birds, no sound except two hearts beating beneath the moonlight. Lena should have left. She knew that. Any sensible person would have turned around and walked away. But she could not stop thinking about the splinter, could not stop imagining years of pain, years of failed attempts to eat comfortably, years of constant irritation, years of suffering. The wolf remained perfectly still, watching her, waiting, and for reasons she could not explain, Lena felt the impossible choice beginning to form inside her heart: walk away and save herself, or stay, and try to help the most feared creature in the entire forest. The cold night wrapped around them. The moonlight shimmered across the snow, and neither one looked away. The cold night stretched endlessly around them. Lena stood motionless at the edge of the clearing, while the enormous wolf watched her with eyes that seemed far older than the forest itself. Fear whispered at her to leave, to run, to choose safety. No one would blame her. No one would even know she had been there. She could return to her cottage wake tomorrow, continue her quiet life, and the wolf would remain here alone with its suffering. The thought settled heavily inside her chest, because she understood loneliness. She understood what it meant to carry pain while the world looked away. The wolf lowered its head again. A rough sound escaped its throat. Not anger, not a warning. Only discomfort. Only exhaustion. Lena swallowed slowly. Then she took a single step forward. The wolf instantly became alert. Its massive body stiffened. Golden eyes narrowed. Every muscle beneath its thick white fur seemed ready to move. Lena stopped, her heart hammered painfully against her ribs. The distance between them suddenly felt very small, yet she forced herself to remain calm. She spoke softly, almost like speaking to an injured animal. "I am not here to hurt you." The wolf did not move. Snow drifted gently between them. The silence felt endless. Then the wolf slowly relaxed. Only slightly, but enough. Lena released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Another careful step, then another. The wolf watched her every movement. She could feel the power radiating from it. One mistake could end everything. One wrong move. One moment of fear. But beneath the danger, she saw something else. Trust struggling to exist. The creature was afraid, too, not of her strength, of disappointment, of pain, of another failed attempt. Lena stopped several feet away. Now she could see the wound more clearly. The splinter was buried deep, far deeper than she had first thought. The area around it looked irritated, raw. From years of discomfort, her chest tightened. 3 years, maybe longer. No creature deserved that. The wolf opened its mouth slightly before immediately closing it again. As if even that simple action hurt, Lena felt her eyes sting. The sight was heartbreaking. Such a powerful creature reduced to silent suffering. She glanced around the clearing, searching for something useful. A fallen branch rested nearby. She picked it up carefully, then broke off a thin piece. The wolf immediately tensed again. "Easy," she whispered. "Easy." "I'm trying to help." The wind moved softly through the trees. For several moments, neither of them moved. Then something unexpected happened. The wolf slowly lowered itself onto the snow. Not fully. Just enough, a silent gesture. A small surrender. Lena stared in disbelief. The creature was giving her a chance. A chance no one else had ever received. Fear rushed through her once more. This was real now. There would be no turning back. She knelt carefully in the snow. The cold immediately soaked through her clothing, but she barely noticed. Her entire focus remained on the wolf. The creature watched her closely, its golden eyes never leaving her face. Lena held the thin piece of wood gently. Her hands trembled, not from cold, from understanding how much trust this moment required. "Need you to stay still?" she whispered. "Just a little longer." The wolf blinked slowly, almost as if it understood. Lena moved closer, close enough to hear its breathing. close enough to see the frost gathering around its muzzle, close enough to understand how enormous it truly was. Her entire body felt tiny beside it, yet somehow she no longer wanted to run. The fear remained, but compassion had become stronger. Slowly, the wolf opened its mouth. The sight made her heart ache. The splinter sat buried deep inside, the tongue old, stubborn, painful. No wonder it had survived for years. Most people would never have been able to reach it. Most people would never have gotten this close. Lena carefully extended her hand. The wolf remained perfectly still. Her fingers brushed warm fur. The contrast against the freezing air surprised her. For a brief second, the creature closed its eyes, as though exhausted, as though it had been waiting for relief for far too long. Lena leaned forward. The splinter became clearer. She could see, where it disappeared into the flesh. Removing it would hurt. There was no avoiding that. The wolf seemed to know it too. Its muscles tightened beneath its fur, its breathing deepened. But it did not pull away. "You are brave," Lena whispered softly. The words escaped. Before she could stop them, the wolf opened its eyes again. For a strange moment, she felt as though it understood every word. The forest seemed to disappear. The village, the loneliness, the years of being unseen, everything faded. Only this moment remained one. Wounded creature, one forgotten woman, and a choice that could change both their lives. Lena carefully positioned the piece of wood, then reached toward the splinter. The instant she touched it, the wolf jerked violently. A low growl rolled through the clearing deep, enough to shake the air itself. Lena stumbled backward. Her pulse exploded. The growl faded quickly. The wolf looked away, almost ashamed, as though it had not meant to frighten her. Silence settled between them again. Neither moved. Neither left after several moments. Lena slowly returned. The wolf remained where it was, waiting, still choosing trust. The sight filled her with determination. She would not fail. Not now. Not after coming this far. Again she reached forward. Again. Her fingers found the splinter. This time, she gripped it firmly. The wolf immediately stiffened. Its jaws trembled. Its eyes squeezed shut. Pain radiated through every part of its body. Lena knew she had only one chance to free it. She pulled. Nothing happened. The splinter refused to move. Her heart sank. The wound had held it for too long. Snow drifted across the clearing. The wolf remained frozen, enduring, waiting. Lena adjusted her grip, then pulled harder. The wolf released a sound unlike anything she had ever heard. A mixture of pain and desperation. The sound echoed through the trees. Birds exploded from distant branches. The entire forest seemed to awaken. Still, the splinter remained lodged inside. Lena refused to stop. Her hands shook violently. Tears burned her eyes. "Come on, please," she whispered. "Please, one final effort. One final pull." Then suddenly, the splinter came free. The movement threw her backward into the snow. For a moment, everything became silent, completely silent. The wolf remained motionless. Lena stared at the long piece of wood in her hand. Disbelief flooded through her. It was over. After all those years, it was finally over. The wolf slowly lifted its head. Golden eyes widened. Its mouth opened carefully, then closed. No pain, no irritation, no frustration. The change appeared almost immediate. Relief swept across the creature like sunlight after a storm. The wolf inhaled deeply, then released a long breath, for the first time since she had met it. The animal looked peaceful. Lena felt a smile touch her lips. A genuine smile. One she had not felt in a very long time. "You did it?" she whispered. The wolf stared at her. Something powerful moved behind those golden eyes, something that felt dangerously close to gratitude. Then the creature stepped forward. Lena froze. The wolf lowered its massive head. its forehead gently touching, her shoulder a silent thank you. Silent acknowledgement. The gesture lasted only seconds, yet it felt strangely important. Then the world changed. A fierce wind tore through the clearing. Snow erupted into the air. The temperature dropped sharply. Lena suddenly realized how exhausted she was. How cold. How weak. The adrenaline that had carried her this far began to disappear. Her hands were numb. Her body trembled uncontrollably. The long journey. The freezing weather. The emotional strain. Everything crashed into her. At once, she attempted to stand. Pain shot through her legs. The ground shifted beneath her. The wolf immediately noticed. Its ears lifted. Its posture changed, concern replacing relief. "I am all right," Lena whispered. But even she knew the words were not true. The storm was growing stronger. The forest darker. The path home impossibly far away. She took one step, then another. Her vision blurred. Snow swirled around her. The cold sank deeper into her bones. Behind her, the giant wolf remained watching, silent, alert, unwilling to leave. And as Lena struggled toward the distant village through the rising storm, neither of them noticed that far beyond the mountains, something had already changed. Something ancient, something impossible. And for the first time in 3 long years, King suddenly awakened without pain. Act 3. The storm arrived without mercy. Snow raced through the forest like white ghosts chasing the wind. The trees groaned beneath the growing weight of ice. Dark clouds swallowed the moon, and Lena walked alone into the heart of it. Each step felt heavier than the one before. The basket hanging from her arm seemed filled with stones instead of herbs. Her fingers had lost feeling long ago. Her cheeks burned from the cold. Yet she continued moving. One step. Then another. Then another. Behind her, the giant wolf remained hidden among the shadows, watching, waiting, following. Not close enough to frighten her. Not far enough to leave. Lena did not know that. She only knew the forest felt strangely different now, as though unseen eyes moved through the darkness beside her. The wind screamed through the trees. Snow struck her face. The path ahead became difficult to see. She blinked repeatedly, trying to keep her vision clear, trying to focus, trying not to think about how far home still was. The warmth from removing the splinter had vanished. Now only exhaustion remained. The deep kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that whispered comforting lies. Just sit down. Rest for a moment. Close your eyes. Lena knew those lies, people who listened to them. During winter, storms often never woke again. She shook her head firmly. No, not yet. The word barely escaped her lips. The village could not be far. She only needed a little more strength. A little more time. A little more luck. The forest answered with another violent gust of wind. Snow exploded across the trail. The world became white. Nothing but white. Above her, below her, everywhere. For several terrifying seconds, she could see absolutely nothing. When the snow finally settled, she realized something was wrong. The path had disappeared. Her stomach tightened. Slowly, she turned in a circle. Every direction looked identical. Trees, snow, darkness. The familiar trail was gone, lost beneath the storm. A wave of fear swept through her. Not the fear she had felt while standing beside the giant wolf. This was different. This was helplessness. She was alone, cold. And now lost, the realization hit harder than the freezing air. For a moment, she simply stood there listening. The wind howled endlessly. No voices, no village sounds, nothing. Only wilderness. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Think. Panic would not help. She needed to think. The village should be west, or perhaps southwest. She was no longer certain. The storm had twisted her sense of direction. The forest seemed unfamiliar now. Almost alive, As if the snow had reshaped the entire world around her, she chose a direction and started walking. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Nothing changed. No lights, no houses, no signs of civilization. Only endless trees. The cold deepened. Her breathing became slower. Her legs heavier. Every step demanded effort. The strength she had borrowed from determination was running out. Far behind her, a large white shape moved silently through the forest. The giant wolf followed her trail with ease. Its golden eyes remained fixed on the struggling woman. The pain that had haunted it for years was gone. The relief still felt unbelievable. Yet the wolf barely thought about itself. Its attention remained on Lena, on the human who had risked everything for a creature most feared, the human who was now slowly freezing. Lena stumbled suddenly. Her foot struck a hidden root beneath the snow. She fell hard, pain shot through her knees. For several seconds she remained where she landed. The snow felt strangely soft, comforting. Warm. Too warm. A dangerous warmth. She knew enough about winter sickness to recognize the warning signs. Her body was beginning to surrender. Slowly, she pushed herself upright. The effort left her breathless. She laughed softly. A tired laugh. Almost sad. "You cannot stop now," she whispered to herself. Not after all this. The wind carried her words away. No one heard them, or so she believed. The wolf heard. The great creature remained hidden among the trees, watching, waiting. Its instincts pulled in conflicting directions. Part of it wanted to approach. Another part feared frightening her. Trust had been fragile in the clearing. One wrong move now could destroy it, so the wolf remained patient. Yet alert, always alert. The storm worsened. Snow began falling in thick, heavy sheets. The forest darkened further. Night settled completely. Lena could barely see her own hands. Her body trembled violently. Every breath hurt. The cold had reached deep inside her bones. She tried remembering warmer things. Spring flowers, summer sunlight, the smell of herbs drying beside her window. Simple memories, small comforts, but they felt distant now. Like pieces of another life. Hours seemed to pass, though in reality it was far less. Time moved strangely inside storms. Moments stretched, thoughts blurred. The line between dreaming and waking began to fade. Lena suddenly heard laughter, children laughing. She stopped. Immediately, hope surged through her chest. The village. Someone must be nearby. She turned toward the sound, listening. The laughter came again, then vanished. Silence returned. Lena closed her eyes. There had been no laughter. Only imagination. Exhaustion was beginning to play tricks on her. That realization frightened her more than the storm. She resumed walking. But now every step felt uncertain. The forest shifted around her. Shadows moved strangely. Branches seemed to reach toward her. Nothing looked real anymore. Then, she saw a small golden light glowing between the trees. Her heart jumped home. Maybe home. Without thinking, she hurried forward. Snow crunched beneath her boots. The light remained ahead, always ahead, never closer. Minutes passed. Still the light stayed, distant. Finally, it disappeared entirely, gone like a dream. Lena stopped walking. Her shoulders slumped. Tears filled her eyes. Not from fear, not from pain. From exhaustion. Pure exhaustion. She had spent years helping others survive. Years guiding lost travelers. Years treating injuries and sickness. Now she could not even save herself. The thought hurt more than she expected. A quiet sadness settled inside her. Perhaps this was how her story ended, not with violence, not with glory. Simply disappearing into snow, forgotten alone, the same way she had lived. The thought should have made her bitter. Instead, it made her think about the wolf. A faint smile touched her lips. At least one creature would suffer less tomorrow. At least that pain was gone. The sacrifice had been worth it. She believed that completely, even now, especially now. The wolf watched from nearby. Something inside the great creature shifted. The human was fading. Its sharp senses could hear the weakness in her heartbeat, could smell the danger growing, could feel the approaching collapse. Waiting was no longer an option. Slowly, the wolf stepped from the shadows. Snow swirled around its enormous form. Lena noticed movement and turned weakly. Her eyes widened. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. The giant wolf stood several yards away, silent, magnificent. Real. A strange sense of relief washed through her. "You again," she whispered. The wolf approached carefully, not threatening, not aggressive, only concerned. Lena wanted to smile, wanted to reassure it. Instead, her knees suddenly gave way. The world tilted violently. She fell into the snow. The impact felt distant, almost unreal. The wolf reached her within seconds. Its nose gently touched her shoulder. Lena blinked slowly. Everything had become blurry. The creature looked different now. Less frightening, more familiar, as though they shared a secret no one else understood. "You should go," she whispered weakly. "The storm is dangerous." The wolf remained beside her, refusing. Lena laughed softly. Even now she found that amusing, a forgotten woman giving advice to the most powerful creature in the forest. Her vision dimmed. The trees above seemed impossibly far away. Snowflakes drifted through the darkness like falling stars. Beautiful, quiet, peaceful, too peaceful. The wolf lowered itself beside her, its thick fur shielding her from part of the wind. Warmth touched her frozen skin. A small warmth, but enough to notice, enough to matter. Lena closed her eyes briefly, just for a moment, only a moment. When she opened them again, the world seemed farther away. The wolf remained there watching over her, guarding her. The realization brought unexpected comfort. She was not alone. Not anymore. The storm continued raging around them. Yet somehow the fear had disappeared. Only weariness remained. Heavy, endless. Her breathing slowed. Snow continued falling, covering the ground, covering the trees, covering the forgotten trail behind them, and as consciousness slowly slipped from her grasp, Lena saw one final thing. The wolf suddenly lifted its head, its golden eyes focused on something far beyond the storm, something approaching, something important. Then darkness swallowed everything, and Lena knew no more. ACT-4 darkness surrounded Lena. Not frightening darkness, not empty darkness, a strange peaceful darkness. As though she were floating somewhere. Between sleep and memory, she could no longer feel the storm, could no longer feel the cold. Only distant warmth remained. Soft, gentle, persistent. Like sunlight trying to reach her through thick winter clouds. Far away, she heard voices. At first they sounded like echoes, muffled and unclear. Then gradually they became stronger, closer, real. She tried to understand the words, but they slipped away before she could catch them. Her body felt heavy. Her thoughts moved slowly. Every attempt to wake seemed to pull her deeper into exhaustion. Then another voice appeared, calm, steady, powerful, yet unexpectedly gentle. The voice spoke only a few words, but something about it made the darkness itself seem quieter. "Take care of her, no matter what it costs." The words lingered. For reasons she could not explain, Lena wanted to hear that voice again. The darkness slowly began to crack, small pieces of awareness returning one by one. The scent of burning wood, the warmth of fire, the softness beneath her body, the faint sound of wind striking distant walls. Not trees, walls. Her eyes fluttered weakly. Light greeted her. Golden light. Warm light. For a moment, everything appeared blurred. Shapes shifted before her vision. A ceiling made of dark woodstone walls. A large fireplace burning steadily. Nearby, confusion washed through her. This was not her cottage. Nothing about this place looked familiar. She tried to sit up. Pain immediately stopped her. A sharp ache spread through her muscles. Every part of her body protested. A quiet sound escaped her. Lips instantly movement came from nearby. Please do not move. Yet an elderly voice spoke gently. You have been through enough already. Lena turned her head slowly. An old woman sat beside the bed. Silver hair framed a kind face marked by years and wisdom. Her eyes held warmth rather than curiosity, the sort of warmth that expected nothing in return. Lena blinked. Where am I? The elderly woman smiled softly. Safe. For now, that is all you need to know. Lena frowned slightly. Safe. The word felt strange, unfamiliar. People often asked whether others were safe. Few had ever asked that question about her. Memories suddenly returned. The storm. The forest. The giant wolf. The splinter. Her eyes widened. The wolf. The old woman nodded immediately, alive, healthy, and very interested in whether. You wake up, confusion deepened. What does that mean? Before the woman could answer, another sound interrupted them. Small footsteps. Fast footsteps, excited footsteps. A moment later, a tiny figure burst through the doorway. A young wolf cub raced into the room. Little creature skidded across the floor before stopping beside the bed. Bright eyes stared directly at Lena. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the cub released a happy sound and jumped onto the blankets. Careful. The elderly woman scolded. She is still recovering. The cub ignored her completely. Lena could not help smiling. The tiny wolf immediately settled beside her arm as though it had known her forever, as though this was exactly where it belonged. Well, the old woman sighed, it appears. You have another visitor. Lena gently touched the cub's head. The soft fur felt comforting. Beneath her fingers, the cub leaned into her touch instantly. Hungry for affection, hungry for closeness. Something inside Lena softened. The little creature looked lonely. She recognized loneliness easily. Perhaps because she carried so much of it herself, the cub closed its eyes contentedly. The sight made her smile again. That simple moment lasted only seconds. Then another presence entered the room. The atmosphere changed immediately, not through fear, not through intimidation, through quiet authority, the kind that did not need to announce itself. The elderly healer stood respectfully. The cub lifted its head. Lena turned toward the doorway and froze. A tall man stood there, dark hair, broad shoulders, calm eyes that seemed to hold entire winters inside them. Everything about him suggested strength. Yet strength was not the first thing Lena noticed. It was restraint, the way he stood, the way he moved, the way he looked at people. Nothing about him felt careless. Nothing about him felt cruel. Silence filled the room. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Then the man stepped forward slowly, giving her time, giving her space. I am glad you woke up. His voice matched the one she had heard through the darkness, steady warm. Unexpectedly gentle, Lena stared at him. Something about him felt strangely familiar, though they had never met. Who are you? The question escaped before she could stop it. The man held her gaze. My name is Rowan. Simple answer, yet somehow it felt incomplete. The elderly healer looked amused. Very incomplete. She muttered. Rowan sighed, softly, then looked back at Lena. I am the Alpha King of these lands. The words should have shocked her. Perhaps under different circumstances they would have. Yet exhaustion dulled the impact. She simply blinked, the Alpha King standing beside her bed, watching, her as though her well-being mattered. None of it felt real. Why am I here? Rowan remained silent for several seconds, as though choosing his words carefully. Because you saved me. Lena frowned. No, I saved a wolf. A faint smile touched his face, exactly. The room fell quiet. Understanding arrived slowly. The giant wolf, the golden eyes, the strange feeling of familiarity. Everything suddenly connected. her breath caught. That was you. Part of me. He answered gently. Not all of me, but enough. The revelation should have frightened her. Instead, it only created more questions. 3 years, she whispered. The pain lasted 3 years. Rowan nodded. 3 years. Many healers tried. Many failed. Some came close. None succeeded, until you. His voice contained no bitterness. No anger. Only honesty. Lena looked away, embarrassed by the attention. I only removed a splinter. The elderly healer laughed softly. Only removed a splinter, she says. The thing defeated every healer in 3 territories. The cub released a small bark as if agreeing. Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks. She was not accustomed to praise. Not accustomed to gratitude. The entire conversation felt uncomfortable, Rowan noticed immediately. Instead of continuing, he changed the subject. Are you hungry? The question surprised her. Very, she admitted quietly. Good, because the cub already tried stealing your breakfast twice. The cub looked offended. The room erupted with unexpected laughter. Even Lena found herself laughing, a genuine laugh, one she had not heard from herself in a very long time. The sound surprised her most of all. For the next several minutes they spoke about simple things. Food recovery. The storm, nothing overwhelming. Nothing demanding. Rowan seemed careful. Almost intentionally careful. Never pushing. Never asking questions she was not ready to answer. The more Lena observed him, the stranger things felt. This was not what she expected from a king. He listened more than he spoke, watched more than he commanded. Even his silences felt thoughtful. Eventually, the healer stood. She needs rest. Both of you leave. The cub immediately pretended not to hear. Rowan smiled, a habit. It learned from me, apparently. The healer pointed firmly toward the door. Out now. The Alpha King obeyed without argument. The cub followed reluctantly. Halfway through the doorway, it stopped and looked back at Lena. Its tail wagged once, then twice. The sight warmed her heart unexpectedly. Good night, little one, she whispered. The cub finally disappeared. The room became quiet once more. The healer adjusted a blanket around Lena. You are wondering whether any of this is real, she said gently. Lena nodded. The old woman smiled. It is real, though perhaps none of us expected it. What do you mean? The healer looked toward the door where Rowan had disappeared. That man has carried pain alone for many years, longer than most people realize. Then she looked down at Lena. And you have carried loneliness just as long. Neither burden should have belonged to one person. The words lingered after she left. Long after the fire burned lower. Long after the room became silent. Lena stared toward the ceiling, thinking, remembering, feeling. Something had changed. Not only in the forest, not only because of the wolf, something deeper. For the first time in years, she had awakened in a place where people seemed genuinely relieved she was alive. The feeling was unfamiliar. Almost frightening, yet part of her wanted to hold on to it. Outside the room, footsteps paused briefly. Rowan stood beyond the closed door, listening. Not because he wished to intrude, because he wanted certainty. He wanted to know she was safe. The realization puzzled him. For 3 years, pain had consumed every waking moment. Now the pain was gone, yet his thoughts remained fixed on one thing. A woman who had risked her life for a creature everyone feared, inside the room. Lena finally drifted toward sleep, warm, safe, protected, and somewhere deep within the fortress, for the first time in many years. The Alpha King smiled without forcing it. Neither of them understood why fate had brought them together. Not yet, but both sensed the same truth. Story was only beginning. C5 morning arrived quietly. Golden sunlight slipped through the tall windows of the fortress and painted warm patterns across the wooden floor. The storm had finally passed. The world outside glittered beneath fresh snow. Everything looked clean, new untouched. Lena sat beside the window, wrapped in a thick blanket. A steaming cup rested between her hands. The warmth felt wonderful, yet part of her still struggled to believe any of this was real. Only days ago, she had been alone inside, a small cottage where silence greeted her every evening. Now she sat inside the home of an alpha king, surrounded by kindness. She did not know how to accept. That was the strangest part. Not the fortress, not the king, not even the giant wolf. The kindness, it unsettled her, because every time someone smiled at her, she found herself waiting for the moment they would need something. Every time someone offered help, she wondered what payment they expected. Years of loneliness had taught her those habits. They were difficult to forget. A sudden blur of movement raced through the doorway. Lena barely had time to react before the wolf cub launched itself into her lap. The little creature nearly spilled her tea. Oh, Lena laughed. Good morning to you too. The cub wagged, its tail so hard that its entire body moved with it. Then it buried its face against her blanket, searching. Looking hunting? For breakfast? You are impossible, Lena said. The cub immediately looked pleased with itself. A moment later, another voice appeared from the doorway. I have been saying that for months. Rowan entered carrying a wooden tray. The sight surprised her. Kings did not carry breakfast trays. At least not in the stories she remembered. Yet Rowan seemed completely comfortable doing exactly that. Tray held fresh bread, fruit-warmed soup, and enough food to feed 3 people, or 1 growing cub. The cub immediately focused on the tray. Its eyes widened with determination. Absolutely not, Rowan said. The cub ignored him. Rowan sighed. See what I endure every day. Lena smiled despite herself. The simple conversation felt easy, natural. There was no pressure inside it. No hidden expectations. Only warmth. Rowan placed the tray beside her chair, then settled into a seat nearby. Neither spoke for several moments. The silence never felt uncomfortable. That surprised Lena too. Most silences in her life had felt awkward, heavy. This one felt peaceful, like sitting beside a calm river. Eventually, Rowan glanced toward the snow-covered mountains outside. You are stronger today. Statement. Not. A question. Lena nodded. I think so. Good. The healer says you may begin walking around the fortress tomorrow. The thought excited her more than she expected. Being confined to a room reminded her too much of sickness, too much of weakness. She wanted movement fresh. Air purpose? The cub barked happily as if approving the idea. Rowan looked at it. You simply want someone else to chase. The cub showed no shame whatsoever. The following days passed gently. Each morning brought something new, a new hallway, a new courtyard, a new view from the fortress walls. The place felt enormous, yet somehow it never felt overwhelming. People greeted her politely. Servants smiled. Guards treated her with respect. No one ignored her. No one looked through her. The experience felt almost unreal. Several times she caught herself waiting for disappointment, waiting for the illusion to break, but it never happened one afternoon. She wandered into a quiet garden hidden behind the fortress. Snow covered most of the ground, yet a few evergreen plants still thrived beneath the cold. Lena knelt beside them, examining their leaves. Her fingers automatically moved into familiar patterns, checking roots, inspecting growth, noticing small details. You miss your work, Rowan said. Lena turned. She had not heard him approach. Little she admitted. Helping people gave shape to my days. Rowan stood beside her, looking toward the garden. Then perhaps you should continue. The suggestion surprised her. Here, of course. The fortress healer could use assistance. The children enjoy listening to stories, and the cub has already decided you belong here. The last statement made her laugh softly. Belong. The word lingered inside her mind. Belonging had always seemed like something. Not for someone easily forgotten. Yet the fortress continued challenging everything she believed about herself as days became weeks, another change quietly appeared. The cub stopped following her everywhere. At first that seemed impossible. Then she realized the truth. The cub still followed her everywhere, but now it also followed Rowan. The little creature bounced constantly between them, running to Lena. Then Rowan. Then Lena again, as though determined to keep them together. One evening they sat near a large fireplace while snow fell beyond the windows. The cub slept peacefully between them. Its tiny body stretched across both their feet. A bridge, a living bridge. Lena stared into the flames. Do you ever get lonely? The question escaped unexpectedly. Rowan remained, silent for several moments, long enough to answer honestly. Yes. The single word surprised her. You are surrounded by people. So are you when you are helping a village. His answer arrived gently, without judgment, without criticism, only understanding. Lena lowered her eyes. That was different, was it? The question settled between them, because perhaps it had not been different at all. Being surrounded by people did not guarantee connection. Being needed did not guarantee belonging. Both of them understood that truth, more than most. The fire crackled softly. The cub shifted in its sleep. Rowan looked toward the flames. People often see titles before they see people. He said quietly, they see a king, a leader, a responsibility. Very few see the man beneath those things. Lena understood, immediately because people had done something similar to her. They had seen usefulness, not personhood, need, not value. For a while, neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The understanding already existed, growing naturally between them, like roots beneath soil invisible, strong, steady. Another week passed, then another. Lena slowly became part of daily life inside the fortress. Children sought her out for stories. Servants brought her questions about herbs. The healer requested assistance more often than not. Every day carried purpose. Every day carried connection. And every day the idea of leaving became more complicated. One afternoon, she stood atop the fortress wall watching snow drift across distant valleys. The landscape stretched endlessly beneath a pale winter sky. Beautiful. Peaceful. Voice interrupted her thoughts. You look happier. The elderly healer approached, carrying a basket of herbs. Lena smiled softly. Do you do? The old woman studied her carefully, then added, You also look frightened. Lena laughed quietly. That too. The healer nodded, as though expecting the answer. Healing often frightens people more than suffering. Lena blinked. What does that mean? The old woman looked toward the mountains. When people suffer for a long time, they learn how to survive. Pain becomes familiar. Loneliness becomes familiar. Being cared for. Being valued. Being loved. Those things feel far more dangerous. The words struck deeper than Lena expected, because they were true. Part of her trusted this new life. Another part feared losing it. Feared waking up and discovering it had all been temporary. The healer squeezed her shoulder gently. You do not have to decide everything today. Then she walked away, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts. That evening, the cub dragged a blanket across an entire room for reasons known only to itself. Rowan spent 10 minutes attempting to stop it. The cub spent 10 minutes ignoring him. Lena laughed so hard her sides hurt. The sound filled the room. Bright, warm, alive. Rowan found himself staring at her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was not. Because she was extraordinary, though she was that too. He watched because the sound felt important. As though something wounded had finally begun healing, Lena eventually noticed his gaze. The laughter faded. A different silence settled between them. Softer than before, warmer. Neither looked away immediately. Neither rushed to break the moment. The cub suddenly sneezed. The spell shattered instantly. Both laughed. The tension disappeared. Yet something remained. Something new. something neither fully understood. Later, that night, Lena sat beside her window watching moonlight spread across the snow. The fortress had grown quiet. Most people were asleep. Only a few distant lanterns remained lit. She rested her head against the glass. Remembering the woman who entered the forest that night felt far away. Now not gone, never gone, but changing. Slowly, carefully, like winter preparing for spring. Below the window, she noticed movement. A familiar figure crossing the courtyard. He paused briefly, looking up toward the fortress toward her window. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Neither waved, neither spoke. Yet something passed between them. Recognition, trust, perhaps even the beginning of something more. Then Rowan continued walking, and Lena remained by the window watching snow drift beneath the moonlight, completely unaware that a choice waited ahead, a choice that would determine where her heart truly belonged, and for the first time in many years, the future no longer looked empty, it looked possible. ACT. Winter slowly loosened its grip on the mountains. The snow remained across the valleys, but the air had begun to change. The cold felt softer now, gentler, as though the world itself was taking a slow, careful breath after a very long season. Lena stood beside the fortress wall, watching the sunrise spill gold across distant peaks. The sight never grew old. Every morning felt different. Every morning revealed some new beauty hidden inside the landscape. Weeks had passed since the night she removed the splinter, weeks since she nearly vanished beneath the storm. Sometimes it still felt impossible, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. Yet the warmth of the stone beneath her hands was real. The distant voices drifting through the courtyard were real, and the feeling growing inside her heart was becoming impossible to ignore. For the first time in her life, she no longer felt invisible. The realization both comforted and frightened her, because once a person experienced belonging, the thought of losing it became terrifying. Footsteps approached behind her. She did not need to turn around. She already knew who it was. "You always find the best view," Rowan said. A smile touched her lips. "Maybe the view keeps finding me. That sounds like something the healer would say." She laughed softly. "Perhaps I have spent too much time around her." Perhaps. They stood together watching the sunrise. Neither rushed to fill the silence. They had long ago stopped needing constant conversation. Their quiet moments had become conversations of their own, comfortable, easy, real. The fortress below slowly awakened. People moved through the courtyard. Children raced between buildings. Servants carried supplies. Life flowed naturally around them. Lena watched it all. Then a thought surfaced. One she had been avoiding for days. Maybe weeks. Her expression changed slightly. Rowan noticed immediately. "Something is troubling you." She looked away toward the horizon. "I have been thinking about the village." The words settled between them. Rowan remained silent. Waiting. Giving her space to continue. "I left without saying goodbye. Many people depended on me. The healer, the children, the families. They do not know what happened." A shadow of guilt crossed her face. "I should have returned sooner." Rowan nodded slowly. "You are worried about them?" "Yes, and perhaps about something else." She looked at him. "What do you mean?" His expression remained calm. "You are trying to decide where you belong." The truth landed gently, because it was exactly what she had been struggling with. The fortress had become home. The people here had become important. The cub had woven itself completely around her heart, and Rowan, she could no longer imagine her days without him. Yet part of her remained tied to the life she left behind. Not because she was happy there. Because it was familiar. The unknown always carried fear. Even when the unknown was beautiful, Rowan studied her quietly, then surprised her completely. "You should go." Lena blinked. "What, return to your village? See the people who matter to you. Take all the time you need." Answer caught her off guard. A strange ache touched her chest. You would let me leave. The moment the question escaped, she wished she could take it back because it sounded wrong, possessive, unfair. Yet Rowan simply smiled. Lena, I would never keep you anywhere. Words were gentle, steady, certain. If you stay 1 day or 1 year or forever, it must be your choice. Only your choice. Emotion tightened her throat because nobody had ever offered her that kind of freedom before. Most people made demands, expectations, requirements. Rowan offered trust. Nothing more. Nothing less. The conversation ended there. Not because it was finished, because neither needed more words. The truth already existed between them. Several days later, Lena returned to her village. The journey felt strangely familiar. Forest. The hills, the winding paths, everything looked the same. Yet she felt different. The moment she entered the village, people noticed. Not because she carried anything valuable, not because she arrived beside soldiers or servants, because they genuinely seemed relieved to see her. Questions immediately followed. Where had she gone? Was she safe? What happened during the storm? Lena answered patiently. Though she left certain details untold, the giant wolf, the Alpha King, those parts felt private somehow. Throughout the day, she visited homes she once helped, the elderly man with the broken fence, the mother whose child often became sick, the widow who needed firewood. Everywhere she went, people welcomed her warmly. The kindness surprised her. Perhaps they had always cared more than she realized. Or perhaps absence had taught them what presence meant. By evening, she sat outside her old cottage watching the sun disappear. The place looked smaller than she remembered, lonelier. The silence felt different now, not comforting. Empty. For years, she had accepted that emptiness as normal. Now she understood the difference. Being alone and feeling alone were not the same thing. The sound of paws racing across snow suddenly interrupted her thoughts. Lena looked up and laughed. The cub came charging toward her at full speed. The tiny wolf nearly rolled down a hill in its excitement. A familiar figure walked behind it, much slower, much calmer. Rowan. The cub launched itself into her arms, whining dramatically as though they had been separated for years instead of days. I was gone. 3 days. Lena informed it. The cub disagreed. Completely. Rowan stopped beside her. I believe you have deeply wounded its feelings. Clearly. She smiled. The evening passed quietly, the 3 of them sitting together beneath a sky full of stars. No grand speeches, no dramatic confessions, just peace. The kind of peace people spend their entire lives searching for. As darkness deepened, Rowan finally spoke. You do not have to decide tonight. Lena turned toward him. Decide what? Whether you return, whether you stay, whether you choose something entirely different. His gaze remained steady. I only want you to choose what makes you happy. The words reached the deepest part of her heart because they carried no pressure, no manipulation, no expectation, only care. And suddenly, Lena understood something. She had spent her entire life waiting for someone to choose her, waiting for someone to see her, waiting for someone to believe she mattered. Yet the answer had never been about being chosen. The answer was about choosing. Choosing where she belonged, choosing who she trusted, choosing the life she wanted. For the first time she had that freedom, and for the first time she knew exactly what she wanted. The decision arrived quietly, without drama, without fear. Like sunrise spreading across a sleeping valley, she looked toward her cottage, then toward Rowan, then toward the cub currently asleep across her lap. A small smile touched her lips. I think I already know. Rowan waited, patient as always. Lena took a slow breath. Home is not a place, she said softly. It is the people who make you feel seen. The words hung in the air, warm, certain, true. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, from relief. I spent so many years believing I did not belong anywhere. She whispered, but I was wrong. The cub lifted its head immediately. As though sensing the importance of the moment, Lena laughed through her tears, then looked directly at Rowan. I want to stay. The simplicity of the statement made it even more powerful. No grand declaration, no dramatic promise. Just truth. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. A quiet breath, leaving him. Relief. Pure relief. When he looked at her again, his smile was impossible to hide. Then we will make sure you always have a place here. The cub barked loudly, as if approving the arrangement. All three laughed. The sound carried into the night, warm and bright beneath the stars. Months later, spring. Finally, arrived snow melted from the valleys. Wildflowers returned. Life awakened everywhere. The fortress felt different now. Lighter, fuller. Lena worked beside the healer, taught children, helped families, and spent far too much time being followed by a certain stubborn cub. The cub never improved. Not even slightly. Rowan remained patient, steady, gentle. Their bond continued growing day by day, not rushed, not forced, built through trust, respect, and countless ordinary moments that became extraordinary because they were shared. One evening, Lena stood beside the fortress window watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold, and rose. Rowan joined her quietly. Neither spoke for a while. The silence felt perfect. Below them, the cub chased butterflies through the courtyard with complete determination and absolutely no success. Lena laughed. Rowan laughed with her, and in that simple moment she understood something beautiful. The loneliness was gone. Not because life had become perfect, because she no longer carried everything alone. The forgotten woman had found a family. The wounded king had found someone who saw the man beneath the title, and a lonely little cub had found exactly what it needed. Most a home filled with love. Outside, the last light of day faded across the mountains. Inside, the fortress warmth remained, steady, enduring, certain. And as the evening settled gently around them, all three stepped forward into a future that no longer felt uncertain. Future built not by fate alone, but by kindness, choice, trust, and the courage to believe they deserve to belong.